Class, welcome back. Welcome back. We're in what, week 6? Yeah, you know how I know that we're in week 6? Because we're in India. Yes, at the beautiful, beautiful Taj Mahal. Now, I will say, this is a week that I can say this. I have never been to the Taj Mahal. But if I was there, I know that just looking at that structure and just going through my mind, you know, the risk management, the risk mitigations that went into building that. Hey, a couple of fun facts about the Taj Mahal. You know, it took 22 years to build. Yeah, 22 years. And they started building that in, 1632 AD. Also, over 22,000 laborers that was part of that construction of the Taj Mahal. Now, a lot of the stones and the precious gems came from countries really all throughout that Far East region, you know, China, Pakistan, a lot of those countries. Now, when you look at the Taj Mahal, you know, even though it sits in India, but really the construction is a mixture of a lot of cultures. It's a mixture of the Persian culture, the Ottoman culture, Ottoman Empire, with, you know, had influence on that, as well as Indian and Islamic architecture. So a lot of things went into that. So now you see, yeah, having class sitting out here looking at the Taj Mahal it's I don't know a better way to say wow, except risk management and your capstone class. I know. Week 6. Let's take a look at what we got in week 6. Yes. That risk definition. It is. Can we all say this together? You know, in a group. Oh yeah, on 3. 1, 2, 3. Risk is the likelihood of a threat agent taking advantage of a vulnerability and the corresponding business impacts. If you learn nothing else from this class, this is going to be, you know, tattooed on your forehead by the time you finish this course. So this week, what are we looking at? Risk mitigations, as well as the risk assessment report and how to report that. Now, I will say, if you remember week one, when we went through quite a bit of information in week 1, I told you that was the basics. That was the heart of this course in week 1. Everything else really builds on that. And I think pretty much a lot of the information we're going to talk about today is things that we had already covered in week 1, as far as especially risk mitigation strategies. Because now we've gathered our data all the way up to this point. We've gathered our technical data, administrative data, as well as physical data. We've gone through the risk models and things that we want to see. Now, how do we start mitigating? What are our mitigation strategies? Remember, we talked about this of acceptance, avoidance, transference, and mitigation. This is how what we're going to do with risk, or this is really more realistic. These are the recommendations that we're going to make to our senior leadership, to the information owner, to the program manager, of how to recommendations on each of the different risk categories and how to best have a strategy of how to manage risk. We talked about this already, where you have critical information, you've got a threat, and these threats are constantly trying to get to that information. Even when we put controls in place, it doesn't fully mitigate all of the risk. So there's always something called residual risk that we have to deal with. In almost every situation, we have residual risk. And do we accept it, or do we do typically a cost benefit analysis? Say, do I mitigate this? Do I throw more money at this and come up with other security controls that will help mitigate this? One of the things we don't want to do is make a recommendation to our leadership to spend more money mitigating a risk than the threat or than the asset itself is worth. It's very easy to do that if you're not careful. So this is talk about how we implement security controls and then manage the residual risk. Now, one thing that we haven't talked about is called risk appetite and risk tolerance. Now, I don't know. So I know some of you guys are pretty young, and you probably didn't watch Popeye growing up, but I did. And I think there's probably a couple of other ones in this class who remember Popeye. Popeye the sailor man, he had the can of spinach, and he'd squeeze it, and it'd pop in his mouth, and he'd chew the spinach, and that supernatural strength came about. Oh, we know Popeye. But if you didn't, it's okay. But he had a saying that, to me, encapsulate risk appetite and risk tolerance. He'd always say, that's all I can stand, and I can't stand no more. You know, if you're not familiar with it, this is him.
That's all I can stand. I can't stand no more.
Yes, I used to love that show. All I can stand. So when we think about risk appetite and risk tolerance, That's what we're talking about. And we kind of lay it out here in a more professional way, I guess, than Popeye. But you know when you've had all you can stands and you can't stands no more. So and that's very important to understand where these thresholds are. Okay, here's what I mean. Let's look at a typical business risk model. Say so if you're over here on this end, this is you are 100% risk adverse. The organization we don't want to take any risk. If we're all the way up here, then we are off the chains. We are going to jump off the deep end of the pool. We are risk. I don't want to hear about it. We're going to take risk. We're going to take chances and go for it. Now, an average business lies somewhere in the middle, and that's what this target risk line is. This is right here. This is where, let's say for this business, the business that you're doing a risk assessment on, that's where they live at, right here at this target line. Okay. So the green line is talking about risk appetite. Risk appetite meaning that this is how much risk or how much we know we can afford to lose. Industries like the banking industry, they have a risk appetite for knowing that they're going to lose so much money in ATM machines. And so they already calculate that in. Large companies, Walmart knows their risk appetite. They know that X amount of people every day are going to walk out of that store shoplifting. So they've calculated that in because they know that their risk appetite runs about right here. Okay. Now, these industries also have risk tolerance. That's I've had all I can stand and I can't stand it anymore. That risk tolerance line said, no, we can't go past that. In many cities and places across the United States, you've got flash mobs coming in and destroying stuff and taking stuff, running out. And now you've got businesses that are closing. They're leaving neighborhoods. Why? Because they hit that risk tolerance level. We can't tolerate this level of loss. So we've got to close stores in some of these communities that may be underserved, but they're underserved for a reason because we've hit our risk tolerance level. So hopefully help you understand the difference between risk appetite, risk tolerance, and what our target risk. Now looking at this company, they could actually take on a little more risk. And really if they wanted to, they could be in this area about right here, right? If where their target risk they could actually be a little more adventurous. Say, hey, look, let's take a little more chances, do some things that could, because that risk there is inversely proportional to profitability. Meaning that, do we want to launch out into this new product line? Do we want to do these type of things? And you may say, well, why is that important to me from a risk assessment perspective? Because your risk assessment is what is now drawing that target risk line. That's the importance of that risk assessment. So this is where we're operating from a security perspective with respect to risk. So if you want to take on some new business, now it's going to increase our security risk by X amount, which is going to push this line over here a little farther. So now you're able to help the business understand how much more risk can we take on. Let's say we want to do a merger, okay? And to do this merger, we're going to combine our IT departments. A lot of risk associated with that from a business perspective, from a security perspective, from an IT perspective. That risk assessment, now you know where your baseline is, and now you know how far you can go this way before you're over here. You may hit that I had all I can stands, I can't stands no more line for your risk tolerance. So important to understand that because that's one of the major outputs, from a business perspective, from a planning perspective, that your risk assessment does for an organization. Now, flipping over a little bit, we're going to talk about that. You finished up that now, the reporting. Now, like I said, we've already gone through this again in week 1. Not going to rehash that, but this gives you an idea again what your reporting outline should kind of look like. Areas that you want to touch on when you build your risk assessment report. All right. So like I say, just to hit on a few of the key things, key takeaways, reporting, writing that report is very important because you're communicating to senior leadership, to key stakeholders about the risk assessment, risk posture. But really, I think the big takeaway this week is understanding that risk profile, understanding where your risk appetite and risk tolerance and where your baseline risk is within your organization. All right, guys, have a great week. Week 7 is coming up. Be ready for it. If you need anything, always reach out.